What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? My voice sounds a little funny today because I am sick. I get a little throat thing and it's making me sound a little weird. So I'm gonna try to make this brief. Please bear with me in these intros and outros. Now today we're going to be going over a video where a guy thinks that Jesus, or the evidence for Jesus, is as reliable as a thumbprint.
What if it was possible to be that certain about Jesus? What would qualify as proof of Jesus' divine nature? If there were prophecies that were accurate, specific, written before the events happened, which couldn't be fulfilled on purpose, and less likely to happen than a 1 chance in 64 billion, then the case for the divine nature of Jesus could be called proven by modern legal standards.
So yes, we're going to be talking about how Jesus is as reliable as a thumbprint today. So if you're interested in figuring out why this guy is wrong, then please stay tuned. This guy has been making a lot of videos. His channel used to be Questions From Atheists, and he had a website for it called questionsfromatheists.com. But now it's like Lucas, some kind of fucking name. Lucas Answers. So it's Lucas Answers now. But anyways, he made this video when it was Questions From Atheists. He wants to try to prove that Jesus existed on the basis of fingerprints. So we're going to give him a chance here on the channel. We're going to see how fingerprints actually prove Jesus.
The chances that two people will have the same fingerprint is about 1 in 64 billion. That's why fingerprints are used in criminal cases, because they are considered near certain proof.
I would say that fingerprints can still be flawed. They can be smudged, they can be partial prints. Also, the context surrounding where the prints were and why the prints are there. There's a lot of context surrounding fingerprints and what they can actually prove. But I will say that if you get a clean fingerprint, you can match it to a single person, but that's if it's not like smudged or manipulated in some kind of way. I mean, fingerprints aren't foolproof. Oh yes, this is actually what happened. I don't know why he's presenting it as this, because it's a bit disingenuous to even present it this way, because that's not how fingerprints are actually used. You can use fingerprints to place somebody at a certain place or something like that, but it's not like, oh, you're guilty because we found a fingerprint underneath the underneath the lip of the stove next to the cum.
What if it was possible to be that certain about Jesus?
It's not possible to be that certain about Jesus. Like, I don't even know why you would think, like, we don't have fucking fingerprints from the first goddamn century.
What would qualify as proof of Jesus' divine nature?
Ooh, this is different. Yeah, magical, like, you took the fingerprint and it's like Jesus on the cross on his fingerprint. It's like, oh fuck, we should have known. What would qualify as proof of Jesus' divine nature? I think that you would need a hell of a lot of proof, not just like people saying that, oh yes, he definitely did. I think that you would need some kind of physical proof that nature was manipulated in a way that is counter to natural occurrences and natural law. So you would need that kind of proof to prove that Jesus was divine. But you know what? As it is, we do not have like hardly any evidence for a historical Jesus. I'm not going to say that it's completely impossible that Jesus existed in history, but what I will say is that he probably didn't, and that there's more than enough reason to think that he was made up. But I don't think that this particular question can actually be answered at all, either in the negative or in the affirmative. So I think that you need a different question.
If there were prophecies that were accurate, specific, written before the events happened, which couldn't be fulfilled on purpose, and less likely to happen than a 1 chance in 64 billion, then the case for the divine nature of Jesus could be called proven by modern legal standards.
No, that's ridiculous. First off, where you fuck up, prophecies. Prophecies are not going to be legit, and also prophecies will not hold up in court. What about prophecies makes you think that modern legal standards would verify that prophecies actually occurred? Prophecies is probably the worst foundation that you could build a case for Jesus off of. regardless of whether it's like a mediocre historical Jesus or like this divine fuck. But if the prophecies were accurate, there's been no prophecies that have indicated that they have come true. All of the quote-unquote prophecies that have come true have always been so vague as to it's up for interpretation as to what they're even fucking talking about. And if you count that as a solid prophecy, then fucking Nostradamus predicted a whole bunch of shit. And I can guarantee you that he was probably more magical than fucking Jesus. Specific. Yes, the Bible, the Old Testament does have specific quote-unquote prophecies about Jesus. But the fact that all 353 prophecies from the Old Testament Jesus fulfills in all of the Gospels in the New Testament, I would have to question that. Like, I mean, that's a lot like taking out a brand new deck of cards and being able to guess every single one of them correct or every single one of them wrong. Like, either case is highly improbable. Them being specific and the Bible fulfilling them would seem to indicate that it was all bullshit and made up. Like, people took those prophecies and just made shit up and made Jesus fit those prophecies. Like, I mean, it's really not that hard to get there. Written before it happened? Well, that's kind of the definition of prophecy, so I don't even know why you're throwing that shit in there. Cannot be fulfilled on purpose. I'm guessing he means, which I'm sure that he explained it or whatnot, but I'm guessing he means like somebody just, purposefully putting themselves in a position where it's fulfilling one of the prophecies. But, I mean, the prophecies in the Old Testament actually aren't all of that, like, specific. They want to act like it's specific, but it's not specific. It uses coded language, and it's always up for interpretation. If it was so specific, then you wouldn't have, like, Jewish scholars and other people like that are saying, like, oh, no, they were post hoc reasoned to explain Jesus. So I think that particular confusion actually is proof against this whole specific or specificity claim that this guy's making for the prophecies for Jesus.
Standards. For your consideration, I give you Exhibit 1.
Oh, thank you for Exhibit 1 and my consideration. I will take it into massive consideration. Thank you for providing me with shit to consider.
The Messiah would be a descendant of Abraham. Deuteronomy 18:18, written in the 600s BC. Based on world population estimates, any random person has less than a 1 in 350 chance of being the right race to fulfill this prophecy.
Okay, I don't know if I have to come out and say this, but racist! You can't tell me Jesus can't be Asian. If the motherfucker can be white in the Middle East, the motherfucker can be Asian too. It's also hard to be a descendant of Abraham when Abraham didn't actually exist. See, this is one of the things that we know from archaeological evidence as well as other recorded history, that Abraham didn't actually exist. Abraham's a made-up patriarch in the Pentateuch, the Septuagint, whatever you want to fucking call it. It's hard to be a descendant of him if he never actually existed. So I don't know where they're exactly getting this. I'm guessing they're just pulling it out of their ass. That it's a 1 in 350 chance, with the racist thing. I do honestly think that if fucking Jesus can look like Caesar Borgia in the 1st century, the motherfucker can definitely be goddamn Asian or black. He's actually more likely darker skinned than this guy thinks. This is the start of him pulling out randomly assigned probabilities. Now, I myself use Bayesian logic in order to come to some conclusions about history. And a lot of people claim that that is just pulling numbers out of their ass, or out of my ass, I guess. But it's really not, because whenever you think about history, you think of how likely something is, and you assign some kind of verbiage that can be used to indicate a certain percentage of reliability or trust or whatnot in that claim being true. So I get using that kind of language and everything like that, but he's going to be doing his math wrong. And I'm not saying that this 1 in 350 chance is correct. I don't think that you could just narrow it down to that one particular race.
Number 2, the Messiah would be from the tribe of Judah. That's Genesis 49:10, which was written in the 900s BC. And the Messiah would be a descendant of David. That's 2 Samuel 7:12.
Okay, David did exist in the tribe of Judah. I think that's one of the only lines that actually continued to exist in the Middle East or whatnot. But I mean, that's just saying that he's going to be a Jew. I mean, you know, considering which tribes actually ended up making it.
Written in the 500s BC. The odds that any given descendant of Abraham could fulfill this prophecy is about a 1 in 10 chance.
Okay, that is completely pulling it out of his ass, and I actually went to their website to figure out like how they are doing this. Like the 1 in 10 chance. Here's how he explains it. When the prophecy first foretold that the Messiah, or Shiloh as he's sometimes called, which I love how the Christ figure in the Old Testament has so many fucking names that, I mean, almost every single quote unquote prophecy could be about him. Anyways, would come from Judah. Judah made up about 12% of the nation of Israel. By the Roman era, 10 of the tribes of Israel had vanished by assimilation into other nations. And then he talks about how the people known as Jews are all descendants of Judah, Benjamin, or Levi. The Levi were thought to make up about 8% of modern Jews. I guess that leaves like 4% being like Judah and Benjamin. He says that it's more than fair to say that 90% were related to David by the 1st century. Taking history as a whole, that means that any descendant of Abraham has lived about a 1 in 10 chance of fulfilling this particular prophecy by chance. And I don't know how he gets the whole 1 in 10 chance here. For every one guy, for every 10 people, one of the guys could be fulfilling that particular prophecy. Okay, how do you figure? Like, he doesn't actually explain the math here. He just throws out a bunch of numbers and he's just like, trust me, you believe me yet? Okay, well, I'll keep doing it if you'll keep believing me. I'll keep pulling numbers out my ass.
Number 3. The Messiah would arrive while the temple was still standing. That's in Malachi 3:1, written in the 400s.
But you see, the Messiah would arrive when the temple was still standing. That's not specific. The fucking thing was standing for a while. Like, I guess, like, before people were able to destroy it, the Messiah is going to come. That doesn't mean that he actually came. Considering the fact that all these things were written, like, hundreds of years prior, means that it's more likely that people just made shit up. They needed it to be true. And they were, like, the 1st century Jewish Christians were looking for a Messiah, so they just fucking made one up. They assumed that he came. They assumed that he did shit. They assumed that he atoned for sins like he's supposed to do. That makes it just as much sense as I would wager that it makes more sense than like fucking prophecies being fulfilled.
The Messiah would be revealed by 33 AD. That's in Daniel 9 and written in the 500s.
Okay, so this particular prophecy has a lot of contention surrounding it because it uses coded language in order to try to dictate some kind of time frame. It says shit like 77s and all, like, I don't know, it uses coded language. If you look up Daniel 9:24 through 27, you'll see what I mean. So you have to assume a lot of things in order to calculate that date. I'm not saying that the Jews didn't assume those things and, calculated a date and, when it came and went and nobody knew anything fucking happened, I'm guessing they started seeing a resurrected Jesus.
Any person who has lived since then had a 1 in 16 chance of being born close enough to this date.
Okay.
Number 4.
I don't know where he gets the 1 in 16 chance. Again, he just pulls it out of his ass.
The Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. That's Micah 5:2, written in the 700s BC.
Okay, and that's why there's 2 contradictory birth narratives where, like, it's an odd thing for him to have to go to Bethlehem. In Luke, you have him traveling for a census, and then in fucking Matthew, he's just there in Bethlehem.
There was a 1 in 3,968 chance of a Roman-era Jew being born in the right place to fulfill this prophecy.
All right, so the way that he actually does this, the 1 in 396 chance, he says the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. There were around 1,000 people who lived in Bethlehem at the time prescribed for this Jewish Messiah. The birth rate in the ancient world was around 80 births per 1,000 per year. In the 40 years before 28 AD, there were 12 million Jews who were born in that same time frame, there would have been an estimated 3,200 births in Bethlehem. Therefore, he gets 1 in 3968. I don't know if he's counting like the 12 million Jews, but I mean, basically what you're looking at here is you would have to calculate the amount of people born around the time that Herod died, which was 4 BC. I don't give a fuck what you apologists say about that. And then around 6 AD. And so you'd have to do a few years there. And then you could hypothetically pull out a number from your ass. Like, you don't have any links here that actually show where you're getting your numbers, like where you're getting like your population sizes and everything like that. I know the Bible tries to do some population counting and numbers, but that is obviously not historical at all. So I really don't know where you're getting your numbers from. It just seems like you're pulling shit out of your ass. But regardless, even if this was a real odd for Jesus being born there, the fact that it was prophesied hundreds of years before and then he perfectly fulfills it, that has a lot of alarm bells going off, or at least it should, considering all of the other prophecies that you guys say he fulfilled. It makes it more probable that it was made up.
Number 5. The Messiah would be wounded and pierced before his death and would be assigned a grave with criminals. That's Isaiah 53, 5-9, written in the 700s BC. That has a 1 in...
Okay, so like if the prophecies are correct and he was assaulted and he was persecuted and all this other stuff and he was killed and whatnot, he would be hung beside, like he would suffer beside criminals and would be assigned a grave with criminals. He wasn't, for one thing, he wasn't assigned a grave with criminals. I mean, he was crucified next to criminals, but he wasn't assigned a grave. I mean, could it be talking about them just being put on the cross? What is he talking about here? Because the ultra specific version is, hey, he got buried with criminals. That would make sense if your claim was that he got thrown into a mass grave of criminals, which was the most likely thing to have happened in first century AD. That's not your claim. Your claim is that he died, he was carried off to a tomb and buried alone and then resurrected. So I don't see how this particular thing is actually fulfilled, even by the bullshit standard that a lot of Christians use for their prophecies.
Written in the 700s BC. That has a 1 in 306 chance of being randomly fulfilled.
Again, with the pulling shit out of your ass.
Virtually all credible religious, agnostic, or atheist experts of history agree that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, a descendant of Abraham, Judah, and David, was alive during the Second Temple period, was hailed as Messiah by the crowd in 33 AD, was wounded and pierced before his death, and was assigned a grave with criminals.
I would like to note here the title of this particular slide. Virtually all credible religious, agnostic, and atheist experts of history agree. I love how you have to put so many things onto like who you're actually talking about. Well, now I want to just tell you, virtually all of my pastors and Christian friends and everything agree that Jesus is the Son of God. So that means he is the Son of God. That's like, what is it called? Like the bullseye fallacy or something like that, where you have an ultra specific like set of things, and because all of the information hits the bullseye. I'm doing the sex thing anyways. Because all of your information hits within the bullseye of it doesn't mean that it is actually that. Like you're just taking a subset of a subset and you're saying, oh look, it's proven, and that's not it. Also, I wouldn't say that atheist experts would agree that it was a descendant of Abraham, Judah, and David. Like maybe Judah and David, but definitely not Abraham. So I call bullshit on that. They would say the rest of those things with the exception of assigned a grave with criminals, because I mean that's currently what people think about Jesus, that he was alive during that time, that he was John the Baptist had a role in it and was wounded and pierced before his death. Like I don't know about the wounded and pierced before his death, like persecuted and everything like that. Well, I guess they mean like crucified, but I mean even then that would just be like you could literally do anything to him instead of crucifixion in order to fulfill that. So I love how that's not specific.
With criminals. Historians also agree that the verses that predict these things were written down hundreds of years before Jesus' life.
Okay, that does not make it true, though. That one simple fact. See, this is how they love to take, like, one particular fact and say, oh, well, this is true. Oh, okay, well, that is true, but it doesn't actually help your case. But, fucking it does! So just because those things were, quote-unquote, predicted hundreds of years before Jesus, that actually means that it's more possible that the shit was made up rather than he fulfilled it.
Calculated together, the probability of all these predictions being randomly fulfilled in one person is about a 1 in 68 billion chance.
Okay, so this number is very important. And regardless of how he actually calculates this and whatnot, the fact that it is very unlikely means that it's more probable and possible that the shit was just made up rather than it actually happening. I'm not saying that, oh, well, because it has a low probability, that means that it didn't happen. I'm saying that it's more likely that shit was just made up rather than he fulfilled it. Because it has a very, very slim chance for it to have actually happened. The natural explanation for this is more probable. The natural explanation for anything is going to be way more probable than the fantastical magic one.
That means it's slightly less likely than two people having the same fingerprint, which is estimated at a 1 in 64 billion chance.
Right. And if you had somebody that was like, oh, hey, look, me and this guy have the exact same fingerprints, you would need incredible amounts of evidence in order to prove that they do, because what's more likely is he's bullshitting you.
So, if you trust a fingerprint as proof, you should trust Jesus too.
No, you see, this is like a false equivalence that he's drawing here, because fingerprints are reliable, therefore Jesus and criteria for Jesus is reliable too. That's utter bullshit, because you start off on faulty assumptions. You start off on a bad foot because you assume a whole lot of things before you even start arguing your case. Like, you assume that prophecies are way more likely than natural events. You assume that these prophecies actually predicted a Messiah. You assume that people didn't just make shit up in the first century, which we have physical proof that people actually did. 2 Peter is a great example. 2 Peter is a forgery made that attests to a physical appearance of Jesus while he was alive on earth and before he was crucified. It's a forgery in the aspect of it's an account of Jesus, not that you can't trust it to glean any kind of information, because in 2 Peter it says, oh, a lot of people are saying that we follow these cleverly devised myths. And that's proof that people were saying, oh, hey, look, no, this guy didn't actually exist. He's a celestial kind of God kind of figure. Like, that is evidence of that particular type of person in the 1st and 2nd century. So, like, there's a lot of things that he assumes on this, and I just don't assume things when I go to say I have proof that Jesus existed or I have proof of the divine nature of Jesus. I don't assume things. I make sure that I have the evidence to support what I'm saying, and you simply don't.
And much more. Go to questionsfromatheists.com.
Boom! Questions from Atheists. Come back another time and I will blow your mind, baby.
Thank you, heathens, for making it to the end. What do you think about Jesus and his reliability? Do you think that he actually is as reliable as a thumbprint? Please let me know in the comments down below. While you're down there, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of mythicist content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice, and I will see you heathens later. You heathens. You heathens. Y'all come back now, you hear?